What would you do if you reached the biggest milestone of your life, and no one was there to cheer you on? Lily sat in her car, staring at the school in front of her. The graduation ceremony was already well underway, the noise of the crowd drifting faintly through the windows, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the parking lot. Her cap and gown felt heavier than they should, a constant reminder of the emptiness she felt inside. She had dreamed of this day for years. The moment when all her hard work, late nights, and sacrifices would pay off. The moment she would walk across that stage and hear applause echoing in the auditorium. But that wasn't what happened. No applause, no cheers, no warm faces in the crowd. Just silence. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as she tried to steady her breath. She had always imagined this day would be different. Her family, her father, her mother, anyone would be there, proud of her. They'd celebrate the girl who had struggled for so long, who had fought for every ounce of success, and now it should have all been worth it. But there was no one. No one at all. Maybe it's better this way, she thought bitterly. At least no one can see how much of a failure I am. Lily's phone buzzed beside her, and she glanced at the screen. A text from her best friend, Jess. I'm so sorry. I couldn't make it, but I'm cheering you on from here. You've worked so hard, and I know you're going to do amazing things. She stared at the message for a long moment. Jess had moved to another state just a few months before, and as much as they had promised to keep in touch, their connection had started to fade. Jess's words were kind, but they felt distant, like a reminder of what Lily had always been alone. Even when Jess had been there, it never felt quite enough. She tapped out a quick reply, trying to mask her frustration. Thanks, Jess. It means a lot. We'll talk soon. But in the back of her mind, something told her this might be the last conversation they'd have for a while. Jess had her own life now, her own future, and Lily felt like she was being left behind. Another buzz. This time, it was her father. Congratulations, Lily. I'm proud of you. Sorry I couldn't make it. Work is crazy right now. Let's celebrate when I get back. Lily's heart sank. She had expected this, but it still hurt. Her father was never really there for her, not in the way she needed. When she was younger, she had always believed that one day he'd show up for her. But as time went on, those hopes faded, and now, years later, they were just words on a screen. Words that didn't carry the weight of true support. At least it's something, she tried to tell herself, but it didn't make it feel any better. Her gaze shifted back to the school. She could see groups of students walking out in their gowns, surrounded by their families, laughing and taking photos. Some even had balloons or flowers, a celebration in full swing. She could almost feel the warmth of their happiness radiating out from the crowds, the buzz of excitement and pride filling the air. But it was all out of reach for her. Lily had never been one to ask for help or attention. She'd always been the quiet one, the one who kept her head down and worked hard, hoping it would be enough. But today she had hoped for something more. She had imagined that when this day finally came, there would be anyone who would be there to witness it with her. Instead, she had only her own reflection in the car window. It's fine, she thought again, trying to convince herself. I don't need anyone. I can do this on my own. But the truth was, it hurt. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. She had spent so many years trying to earn someone's love or approval, trying to prove her worth to a world that seemed indifferent to her existence. And now, on this day, when all her hard work should have meant something, she realized it was all for nothing. The sound of footsteps broke her from her thoughts, and she glanced up in surprise. There, standing by her car, was Mr. Harris, the principal. At first, she thought it might be a mistake, that maybe he was just looking for someone else. But as he drew closer, his familiar face and warm smile made her pause. Mr. Harris was one of the few adults at the school who had always taken an interest in her, even when she had felt invisible to everyone else. Lily, he said, his voice soft but kind. Is everything all right? For a moment, she didn't know how to answer. How could she explain to him the disappointment she felt, the pain of realizing that no one had bothered to show up for her big day? But instead of speaking, she simply shook her head, the tears threatening to spill from her eyes. He didn't press her further. Instead, he opened the car door and slid into the passenger seat. The warmth of his presence was almost overwhelming. "I know this day isn't turning out the way you expected," he said gently, "but I just wanted you to know how proud I am of you, and I think you've done something incredible here." Lily blinked, surprised by his words. "I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. I'm just alone." Mr. Harris nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. But you've come a long way, Lily. You've worked hard to get here, and you've done it without any fanfare. That's something most people can't say." His words struck her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Lily felt like she wasn't invisible. Like someone, at least one person, saw her. Really saw her. Mr. Harris continued, "I'd like to take you out for a cup of coffee. I know you might be feeling down, but I think it's important that you know just how remarkable you are. You're not alone." Lily looked at him, her heart fluttering with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She had been so focused on her disappointment that she hadn't considered that maybe there were people out there who cared, even if they weren't family. Maybe there was still hope. "Okay," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'd like that." As they drove away from the school parking lot, a sense of quiet relief washed over her. It wasn't the graduation she had imagined, but perhaps it was the beginning of something new. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Lily had always been the quiet one, the kind of girl who preferred the pages of a book to the noise of a party, the kind who never really felt like she belonged. But it wasn't always that way. When she was younger, she had big dreams. She used to imagine herself walking through crowded halls, with people turning to admire her strength and intelligence, but somewhere along the way, those dreams had begun to fade. Her childhood wasn't what most people would call ideal. Lily's earliest memories were of her mother, and a beautiful woman with sharp eyes and a gentle laugh. Her mother had always seemed to hover on the edge of something fragile, like she was always fighting to stay grounded, to keep her life in balance. But as the years passed, something changed. Her mother's smiles became rarer, and her patience thinned. Lily didn't understand it at the time, but as she got older, she saw the cracks that had formed between her mother and her father. Her father, David, was a man of few words, even fewer expressions. He worked long hours as an accountant, and when he came home, he would retreat to his office, immersing himself in paperwork as if it was the only thing that kept him from floating away. Lily never felt close to him, not in the way some children had close bonds with their parents. She didn't remember hugs or words of encouragement. She remembered silence, a constant hum of unspoken tension in the house. The last time she saw her mother, Lily was just 10 years old. One evening, her mother had packed a small suitcase and left without a word. The next morning, Lily found a note on the kitchen table. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I'll always love you." And that was it. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a letter and an empty house. The abandonment stung deeply. Lily's world, once filled with the comforting presence of her mother, had shattered in an instant. She didn't understand why her mother had left, only that it felt like something broken, something she couldn't fix. For years, she blamed herself, wondering if there was something she could have done to make her stay. But deep down, she knew it wasn't her fault, at least. That's what she kept telling herself. Her father didn't talk about her mother's departure. In fact, he barely mentioned it at all. It was as though, by ignoring it, he could make the whole thing disappear. Lily tried to reach out to him, to fill the gap her mother had left, but all her efforts seemed to fall flat. He didn't know how to show love, didn't know how to give her the warmth she so desperately needed. So she began to retreat into herself, into her studies, into the world where things made sense. At school, Lily found solace in books. Her love for reading became an escape, a way to ignore the loneliness that gnawed at her. She buried herself in novels, devouring stories of adventure, of characters who overcame great obstacles. It was in these pages that she first learned what it meant to be strong, to fight for what you want. But no matter how many books she read, no matter how many characters she admired, she never quite felt like she belonged anywhere. Still, she was determined to succeed. She knew education was her way out. If she could prove herself, get the grades, win the awards, stand out in a crowd, maybe, just maybe, someone would notice her. Her best friend, Jess, had been the one bright spot in all those lonely years. Jess was everything Lily wasn't: loud, outgoing, and always at the center of attention. Jess was the kind of person who made friends effortlessly, who was always surrounded by people, laughing, joking, and living life to its fullest. But even though Jess had a different kind of personality, they clicked. Jess was the first person Lily had ever felt truly understood by. They bonded over shared classes, long phone calls, and sleepovers where they stayed up late talking about their hopes and dreams. But as high school came to a close, Jess's family moved out of state. They had always been close, but the distance between them was a chasm that neither of them could bridge. The phone calls became less frequent, the messages more sparse, until eventually, they fell into a silence that was deafening. Jess's life had moved on, and Lily felt herself growing more and more isolated. Lily's counselor, Ms. Parker, had always been a quiet source of support. While Lily had never been the kind of student who needed a lot of extra help, she appreciated the steady presence of Ms. Parker, who always seemed to know when Lily was struggling. Ms. Parker had a way of listening that made Lily feel like she was more than just a student with good grades. She was a person who mattered. But even Ms. Parker's kindness couldn't fill the void Lily felt. After graduation, Lily had planned to go to college, to make something of herself, to finally escape the confines of her small town and the shadows of her broken family. But it wasn't just her parents' absence that haunted her, it was the deep-seated feeling that she wasn't quite enough. She didn't have the confidence to believe she could truly make it. And now, here she was, on the most important day of her life, surrounded by empty chairs in the audience. Lily had been so focused on what she didn't have: family, friends, a sense of belonging, that she couldn't see what she did have. She had gotten here, hadn't she? She had earned her diploma, had worked tirelessly to reach this moment. Maybe she hadn't had the perfect family or the loudest cheers, but she had something else: resilience. As she sat in the car, the weight of her emotions heavy on her chest, she realized something that shocked her. Maybe I don't need anyone to show up for me to matter. Maybe I can show up for myself. It was a small, tentative thought, but it was enough to start shifting her perspective. She wasn't completely alone. And maybe, just maybe, there was more to her story than she realized. Lily sat across from Mr. Harris at the small cafe near the school, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee that seemed to be the only thing grounding her in the moment. The cafe was cozy, with soft jazz music playing in the background and the smell of fresh pastries hanging in the air. But no amount of warmth could erase the emptiness she felt inside. Mr. Harris had been kind, patiently listening as she spilled her heart, explaining how everything felt like a series of disappointments. How she worked so hard, tried so many times, but never seemed to get the recognition or support she longed for. And now, this day, her graduation day, felt like the culmination of everything she feared, a day spent in silence, alone. "I know this isn't easy for you, Lily," Mr. Harris said, his voice warm, his eyes filled with empathy. "But you have to remember that your value isn't determined by anyone else's actions. Sometimes, people fail to show up for the wrong reasons, not because you're not worth it." Lily nodded, but deep down, she felt a bitterness rising. How many more times would she hear the same advice? It wasn't that she didn't understand what he was saying, but it was hard to believe it when all she had ever known was disappointment. Her father's absence, her mother's departure, Jess's growing distance, it felt like there was always someone, pulling away from her. And no matter how much she tried to stand tall, it seemed like the world just wasn't on her side. As she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, she found herself recalling her high school years. The years when she had pushed herself relentlessly, determined not to be like the kids who coasted through life with natural charm and ease. Lily had worked tirelessly, balancing AP classes, extracurriculars, and a part-time job, just to keep up with the expectations she had set for herself. Every day felt like a race against time, and every night, she fell asleep with the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. Her classmates seemed so carefree in comparison, their lives appearing to unfold effortlessly. They had parents who attended school events, friends who always had their backs, and a sense of confidence that Lily envied. But Lily never had the luxury of feeling carefree. Every small victory was hard-earned, every success a result of blood, sweat, and tears. She was proud of her achievements, but sometimes it felt like they weren't enough. It wasn't that she wanted attention or accolades, she just wanted to feel seen. To know that, at least for one day, someone would show up for her the way she had shown up for everyone else. As Mr. Harris continued speaking, Lily's thoughts drifted, her mind replaying moments from her childhood that she had long buried. Her father's cold, distant presence, her mother's sudden disappearance, without any explanation. These were the building blocks of her world, the fragments that shaped her reality. And every time she tried to rebuild herself, those pieces crumbled again. "Do you think it's too late for me?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. It wasn't a question she'd ever asked anyone before, but in that moment, it felt like she needed to ask. She needed someone to tell her it wasn't too late, that she still had a chance at happiness, at belonging. Mr. Harris looked at her thoughtfully. "It's never too late, Lily. Sometimes, it just takes longer than we expect. You've been through more than most people your age ever will. But that doesn't define you. It's how you move forward, how you keep fighting, that matters." She wanted to believe him. She really did. But something deep inside her made it hard. What if she was already too broken? What if she had missed her chance at a normal life? "I've tried to move on," she said, her voice almost lost in the hum of the cafe. "I've worked so hard. But when I look around, I feel invisible. I'm still just the girl no one notices." Mr. Harris leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You're not invisible, Lily. I see you. I've seen you fight. You've got more strength than you realize." But her mind was already running in a different direction. She thought about her father again, his last text message to her, telling her how proud he was, but how he couldn't be there because of work. It had been years since he'd truly been a part of her life, and this was no different. She had tried to bury the resentment, tried to tell herself it was enough, but now, on the brink of graduation, the feelings were harder to ignore. Why can't he be there for me? She felt the anger rising in her chest. He was there for everyone else, but not for me. The conflict was brewing inside her, and she couldn't push it down anymore. Her father had never made her a priority. He hadn't been there for her birthday parties, her school plays, her dance recitals, or any of the little moments that had shaped her into who she was. And now, on the most important day of her life, she was alone. She couldn't ignore it. She couldn't act like it didn't hurt. Mr. Harris, sensing the shift in her mood, gave her a moment of quiet. He didn't push her, but Lily could tell he was concerned. He could see the storm raging inside her, the struggle between her desire to rise above the pain and the very real feeling of abandonment she had never fully dealt with. Finally, after a long silence, Mr. Harris spoke. "Lily, You're stronger than this. Don't let the actions of others determine your worth. You have more to offer the world than you know. And the people who truly matter will see you for who you are, whether they're here today or not. Her heart tightened as she looked out the window, her reflection staring back at her. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to see herself the way he saw her. But the doubt lingered, as persistent as the shadows of her past. Lily was caught between the desire to move forward and the weight of everything she had lost. The resentment towards her father, the feeling of abandonment from her mother, it all festered, pulling her in different directions. Could she really move past it? Could she let go of the anger and disappointment? She wasn't sure. But for the first time in a long time, Lily felt the tiniest flicker of hope. The following days after graduation passed in a blur for Lily. The excitement of the ceremony had worn off quickly, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Her diploma now sat on her dresser, framed and untouched, a symbol of achievement that didn't quite feel like one. The empty seats in the auditorium still echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd missed something important. But Lily knew she couldn't stay in this place forever. No more wallowing. No more self-pity. There was no time for that. She had made it this far. She was going to college in the fall, a fresh start in a new city, away from the memories that held her back. That's the plan, right? She thought as she sat at her desk, sorting through college brochures. But even the glossy pamphlets promising new beginnings didn't bring her the excitement they once had. Instead, they only reminded her of the overwhelming uncertainty that lay ahead. Jess had reached out the night after graduation. Her message was short but full of enthusiasm. Lily, we did it. I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you. I'll be rooting for you as you start this next chapter. Let's catch up soon. Lily had stared at the message for hours, unsure of how to respond. She was glad Jess had sent it, but part of her felt resentful. How could she just pick up the phone like nothing had changed? Like their friendship hadn't quietly slipped away with each passing month? Jess had her own life now, full of adventures and new experiences. And Lily? She was stuck in the same place, barely able to move forward. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe Lily had spent so much time waiting for someone else to show up for her that she had forgotten how to show up for herself. She decided to do something different. Something that would force her to face the discomfort, to leave behind the isolation that had followed her for so long. The next morning, she packed a small bag and drove out of town. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, not even her father, who would have probably just told her to be safe and avoid driving too fast. She needed to get away, to clear her mind, and if she was being honest, to escape the weight of everyone else's expectations. She drove for hours, heading into the mountains. The road twisted and turned, climbing higher and higher until the trees began to thicken and the air grew cooler. The quiet, serene beauty of the landscape pulled at something deep inside her. She'd always loved nature, but she rarely took the time to appreciate it, always too busy, too distracted by the constant hum of school and family drama. Lily's car bounced over a small dirt trail that she had found on a map, a road less traveled, and before long, she was parked beside a small lake, the surface of the water shimmering in the early afternoon light. The place felt like it belonged to another world, a world far removed from the one she had left behind. She stepped out of the car, inhaling the crisp air, her senses alive with the smells of pine and earth. The quiet felt heavy at first, but then something inside her began to settle. The anxiety that had built up inside her chest seemed to ease, even if just a little. She had been running for so long, running from her past, running from her own emotions, and now she was forced to face it all. Sitting on a large rock by the lake's edge, Lily allowed herself to just be. She let the sounds of nature, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the gentle lapping of water against the shore, wash over her. For the first time in a long while, She felt something like peace. The journey had started out as an attempt to escape, but now it felt more like a pilgrimage. It was as if she was searching for answers that had always been right in front of her. She thought about her mother, about why she left, about the way she had never explained herself. But then, Lily remembered what Mr. Harris had said. Your worth isn't determined by the actions of others. Maybe it was time to stop waiting for someone to show up for her. Maybe the key to moving forward was to start showing up for herself. But that was easier said than done. Lily thought back to her graduation day, when her father had failed to show up. She hadn't heard from him in days, and the silence was starting to grate on her nerves. Was he just going to let this moment slip by like every other important milestone in her life? He had always been absent, physically and emotionally, but now it was reaching a breaking point. She reached for her phone, the temptation to reach out to him almost overwhelming. She could hear his voice in her head, telling her how proud he was, though it wasn't enough. It never was. But Lily didn't call. Not this time. She didn't want to keep waiting for someone who didn't know how to be there for her. Instead, she pulled up the Maps app on her phone and searched for hiking trails nearby. There was a trail that wound up the mountain, and she decided to take it. It wasn't going to be easy. Her legs were already sore from the drive, and the sun was starting to dip low in the sky, but she knew that sometimes the hardest things were the ones that paid off the most. As she walked along the narrow path, she felt the weight of everything she had carried for so long begin to lighten. The frustration with her father, the bitterness toward Jess, the loneliness that had followed her for years, they all seemed to dissipate with each step. There was something about the physical challenge of hiking that helped her focus, helped her push past the noise in her head and just be in the moment. By the time she reached the summit, the sun was setting, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. Lily stood at the top, looking out over the vast expanse of trees and mountains. The view was breathtaking, vast and beautiful, just like the world she had been too afraid to face. The wind brushed against her face, and she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, she felt something deep inside her shift. She wasn't sure what the future held, or if she'd ever be able to truly forgive her father, or if she'd ever fully heal from the scars of the past. But standing there on that mountain with nothing but the sky and the earth beneath her, Lily realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to start again. To stop waiting for someone else to show up and start showing up for herself. She smiled to herself as she watched the last bit of sunlight fade. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Lily returned home the following evening, her body tired, but her mind buzzing with a new sense of clarity. She hadn't expected the hike to change anything so dramatically, but it had. The mountain had offered her a fresh perspective, one that allowed her to feel the weight of her emotions without being crushed by them. For the first time in years, Lily felt like she was finally standing on her own 2 feet. The evening after her return, as she sat on the edge of her bed, the soft glow of the lamp beside her, Lily couldn't help but think back to everything that had brought her to this point, the years of sacrifice, the loneliness, the way she had always held on to the hope that things would change. She thought of her mom, her dad, and the ache that still lingered in her chest, no matter how much she tried to move on. Then came the sudden realization. Maybe I've been holding on to the wrong things. The phone buzzed beside her, jolting her from her thoughts. Her heart skipped a beat as she glanced at the screen. It was a message from Jess. Lily, I know we've both been avoiding talking about this, but I really think it's time we address everything. Can we meet up tomorrow? I don't want to lose our friendship. The words hit Lily harder than she expected. She'd spent so long convinced that Jess was one of the few people who understood her, that their bond was something unbreakable. But that had changed. Jess's silence over the past year had stung, and Lily had come to accept that perhaps some friendships simply run their course. Yet now, Jess was reaching out, asking for a second chance. The question was, did Lily even want to try? Was she ready to open up to the person who had once been her best friend but now felt like a stranger? She stared at the screen for a moment longer before replying. We can meet. But we need to talk about everything. Lily wasn't sure what to expect when they met. She wasn't sure if she wanted closure or answers or even the possibility of restoring the friendship they once had. All she knew was that she was no longer the same person she had been when they'd last spoken. And that, in itself, was terrifying. The next day, the two of them met at a quiet coffee shop, the same place they had spent so many afternoons gossiping and dreaming about their futures. The familiarity of the place, combined with the tension between them, made Lily feel like a stranger in her own life. Jess was already sitting at a corner table when Lily walked in, her eyes immediately locking onto her. Jess looked the same, blonde hair, green eyes, the same warm smile, but Lily could tell something had changed. There was an edge to her that hadn't been there before. Maybe it was the distance. Maybe it was the way they both felt the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Lily, Jess said softly, her voice carrying a hint of both relief and apprehension. I'm glad you agreed to meet. Lily sat down, forcing herself to look Jess in the eye. There was so much she wanted to say, so many feelings she had bottled up for months. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, it all surged forward, threatening to spill out. But instead, she took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. Do you know what it's been like for me? Lily started, her voice surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside her. I've been so alone, Jess. And every time I tried to reach out to you, it was like you were already gone. We've always been close, but you've distanced yourself, and I didn't understand why. Jess shifted uncomfortably, her hands fidgeting in her lap. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. It's just, everything felt so complicated. I was dealing with a lot of stuff on my own, and I didn't know how to share it with you. I didn't know how to ask for help without feeling like I was burdening you. Lily's heart ached at the vulnerability in Jess's voice. She hadn't expected this, not the apology, not the honesty. But there it was, raw and unfiltered. I get it, Lily replied, her own voice trembling now. I've been dealing with my own things too. But that's not the problem, Jess. It's the fact that we stopped talking. We let the distance grow between us until it became this thing we couldn't cross anymore. You're not the only one who's been struggling. I've been fighting my demons alone for so long, I don't even know where to start anymore. There was a long pause as the two of them sat in silence, the weight of their words settling between them. Lily's mind raced with conflicting emotions, relief that they were finally speaking the truth, but also the sharp sting of all the years spent in silence, avoiding the hard conversations. Finally, Jess broke the silence. Lily, I'm sorry. I know I haven't been there for you the way you needed me. I've been selfish, and I regret that. I want to make things right if you'll let me. Lily's heart softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a glimmer of hope. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know how everything would unfold. But maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe the friendship they'd shared wasn't as broken as she'd thought. Maybe they could rebuild it, piece by piece. Let's take it one step at a time, Lily said, her voice steady but gentle. I'm willing to try, but I can't promise everything will be the same. We've both changed, and that's okay. But I think we owe it to ourselves to be honest with each other and to not let this go any longer. Jess nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I understand. And I'll do whatever it takes, Lily. I don't want to lose you again. In that moment, something shifted inside Lily. She had spent so long believing that she was destined to be alone, that no one would ever truly understand her or stand by her. But now, for the first time in years, she felt the possibility of connection, the possibility of healing. I don't want to lose you either, Lily said, her voice breaking slightly. But I need to learn how to stand on my own first. I need to learn how to be okay with myself before I can be okay with anyone else. The tears that had threatened to fall earlier now came freely, as Lily realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. The moment she finally allowed herself to feel everything, to let go of the past, and to open herself up to the future. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days following Lily's meeting with Jess were filled with a strange, quiet sense of resolution. It wasn't the type of resolution that came with fireworks or sweeping gestures. It was subtle, a slow, almost imperceptible change. But it was there, lingering beneath the surface, like a seed beginning to take root. Lily felt lighter. The weight of years of unsaid words, of unspoken expectations, had lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe. But it wasn't just the reconciliation with Jess that had changed things. It was the quiet realization that she didn't need to wait for others to define her, that she didn't need to rely on anyone else to tell her who she was. She had spent so much time looking for validation, for love, for reassurance from people who were never truly there for her. But now, she understood that her worth wasn't defined by what others did or didn't do. Her worth came from within. That realization was like a door opening in her mind, a door that she'd been too afraid to walk through until now. As the summer days stretched on, Lily threw herself into preparing for her move to college. It wasn't easy. There were moments when her doubts crept back in, moments when she feared she might be making a mistake. But those moments were fleeting. She had learned to embrace uncertainty, to accept that not everything was going to be perfect. Life was messy. It was okay to not have everything figured out. On a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks before her departure, Lily's father called her. It had been nearly a month since they last spoke, and she had resigned herself to the fact that he would probably continue to ignore her calls. But then, as the phone rang, she saw his name on the screen. Her heart beat faster as she hesitated for a moment. What would this conversation be like? What did he want from her now? Taking a deep breath, she answered. Hello, Lily. Hey, her father's voice came through the line, unsteady. I know it's been a while, but I wanted to apologize. I've been thinking a lot about everything lately, and I know I've failed you. I haven't been there like I should have. I'm sorry. Lily's heart dropped. She had expected some form of apology, but hearing him admit it, hearing the remorse in his voice, was something she hadn't prepared for. She wanted to say something, to unload all the pain he had caused her over the years. But instead, she found herself holding her breath, listening as he continued. I've been selfish, Lily. I know that. And I don't want to lose you in my life. I know it might be too little, too late, but I'm trying. I don't know what else to say, except that I'm sorry. I'll be here if you need me. Lily stood still, her thoughts swirling. She had spent so many years wishing for this moment, for her father to acknowledge his absence, his mistakes. And now it was happening. But there was no rush to forgive him, no immediate rush to offer him the absolution he was seeking. She had already done the hard work of healing without him. She had learned to stand on her own, to not depend on his approval or his presence. I hear you, Lily said, her voice steady. And I appreciate you saying that. I'm still processing everything, but I'm not going to pretend that things are fine just because you're apologizing. I've learned that I need to take care of myself, and that's what I'm doing. She let the silence stretch between them, letting him absorb her words. She wasn't trying to punish him, she just wanted him to understand that her life, her growth, wasn't contingent on his actions anymore. She didn't need him to validate her anymore. She was learning to validate herself. I understand, her father said quietly. I'm proud of you, Lily. I'm proud of how strong you've become. And for the first time, Lily believed him. After hanging up, Lily sat on her bed, reflecting on everything that had led her to this point. The journey she had been on wasn't just about moving on from her past. It was about finding her own voice, her own strength, and embracing the future with open arms. She wasn't perfect. No one was. But she had come a long way from the lonely, insecure girl who had stood in that empty graduation hall. That night, as Lily lay in bed, she thought about her future, the one she was creating for herself, one step at a time. College loomed ahead, full of promises and uncertainties, but she wasn't afraid. She had spent so many years trying to fit herself into other people's expectations, but now she was learning to carve her own path. She wasn't going to wait for anyone to tell her what she could or couldn't do. She was going to show up for herself. The sound of her phone vibrating interrupted her thoughts. It was Jess. "I'm so proud of you. I know this is the start of something amazing for you. I'm excited to see what comes next." Lily smiled as she typed her reply. "Thanks, Jess. I think I'm finally starting to believe that too." Lily sat back, staring at the screen for a moment. The road ahead wasn't clear, but she wasn't afraid of it anymore. She wasn't waiting for someone to show up for her. She was going to show up for herself. She was enough, just as she was. And that realization was the most empowering thing she had ever known. As she drifted off to sleep that night, she felt a sense of peace settle over her, peace with the past, peace with her choices, and peace with the future she was about to embrace. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Lily was ready to face whatever came next, with her head held high and her heart wide open. Lily stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the straps on her backpack for the 100th time. The reflection staring back at her seemed almost like a stranger's, yet there she was, smiling, even as butterflies danced nervously in her stomach. It was move-in day, the day she had been both dreading and eagerly anticipating for months. Her heart was full of excitement, but also a lingering nervousness. She had no idea what college would bring, or how she would navigate this new chapter of her life. All she knew was that it was time to leave behind the life she had known and step into a future full of infinite possibilities. The morning sunlight streamed through her window, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a symbol of the fresh start she had been yearning for. It was as if the universe had decided that this moment, the moment when she would walk away from everything she had known, was the moment she would finally take control of her own story. Her mom knocked lightly on the door before entering, carrying a cup of coffee in each hand. "Thought you might need this," her mom said, handing her a cup with a warm smile. She was trying to hide the nervousness in her own eyes, but Lily could see it. "Thanks, Mom," Lily replied softly. She took a sip, savoring the warmth. It was a small, comforting gesture, and it reminded her of all the little things her mom had done for her throughout her life. Despite the years of distance, despite the tension, her mom was still here, still supporting her in this moment. "I can't believe my baby is going off to college," her mom said, sitting beside her on the bed. "I'm proud of you, Lily. You've come so far." Lily looked at her mom, and for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of their past. She felt grateful. Grateful for her mom's love, even when it hadn't always been easy to express. Grateful for her mom's strength, even when it seemed like their family had been falling apart. "I'm proud of you too, Mom," Lily said, her voice sincere. "I think we're both starting over, aren't we?" Her mom's eyes softened. "I suppose we are." She gave a small laugh. "You know, I always thought I'd be the one to guide you, but maybe it's time for you to teach me a few things too." Lily smiled. "We can teach each other." The moment felt like a bridge, a moment of understanding and growth between them that was long overdue. It was the kind of moment that felt fragile, but also incredibly powerful. They were both standing on the edge of new beginnings, ready to embrace what came next. "Are you all packed?" her mom asked, standing up and looking around Lily's room. "I think so," Lily replied, standing up and taking one last look at the familiar surroundings. "It doesn't feel real yet." "It will, honey," her mom said. "It will." With one last hug, Lily grabbed her keys and headed out the door, her heart racing with anticipation. She walked to the car, where her dad was waiting in the driver's seat, ready to help her move into her dorm. His presence was unexpected but comforting. He had offered to drive her, even though their relationship had been strained for years. The gesture was small, but to Lily, it meant more than words could express. As they drove to the college campus, Lily stared out the window, watching the world pass by in a blur. The trees, the houses, the streets she had walked down 1,000 times, they were all part of her past, but now they were fading into the background as she stepped into a future that was still unknown. The campus was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Tall trees lined the walkways, and the buildings stood with a quiet, dignified grace. The air felt different here, fresh, full of possibility. She felt a surge of excitement, mixed with a little apprehension, as they parked near her dorm. This was it. This was the beginning of something new. Her dad helped her unload the car, his movements slow but steady, as if he, too, was savoring the significance of the moment. "You're going to do great here, Lily," he said, giving her a reassuring smile. Lily smiled back, her heart full of mixed emotions. "Thanks, Dad." Together, they carried her things up to her room. The door opened to reveal a small, bright space with a bed covered in fresh, white linens, a desk, and a window that overlooked a quiet courtyard. It was simple, but it was hers. As Lily set her things down, she felt a sudden wave of homesickness. The unfamiliarity of it all. The smell of the room, the silence that filled the space, made her feel small and uncertain. But at the same time, there was a thrill that came with this new chapter, a quiet voice inside her telling her that she was exactly where she needed to be. Her dad stood by the door, his hands in his pockets. "I guess this is it, huh?" he said, his voice filled with a quiet pride. Lily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Yeah, it's crazy. But I think I'm ready." He smiled, a little sadly, as if he, too, was letting go of something. "I'll always be here if you need me, Lily. You know that, right?" Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest, a tenderness she hadn't realized she still longed for. She nodded. "I know. And I think I'm starting to understand what that really means." Her dad gave her one last hug before he turned to leave. "Take care of yourself, kiddo." As he walked out, Lily stood in the doorway, watching him go. She felt the weight of the moment settle over her, the quiet realization that her life was truly changing. There was no going back now, but that was okay. She had spent so many years running from the future, afraid of what it might hold. But now she felt ready to face it, no matter what. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Lily turned to face her new life. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had faced her demons, mended broken relationships, and learned to stand on her own. This was just the next step, a step toward a future she was going to build for herself, one choice at a time. And as she unpacked her belongings, setting everything in its place, Lily smiled. It was a quiet, knowing smile. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The first week at college was a whirlwind. Lily's days were filled with orientations, campus tours, and the somewhat awkward process of introducing herself to her new peers. The bustling campus, full of unfamiliar faces and voices, was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Every corner she turned, she saw someone laughing with friends, joining study groups, or heading off to class. It was the kind of college experience she had always imagined, full of promise and endless possibility. But as the days wore on, a gnawing sense of loneliness crept in. She had left behind the comfort of home, the familiarity of her old life, and now, here, she was on her own. Even though she had made some new acquaintances, the tight-knit friendships she had hoped for didn't materialize right away. The people she met were nice, but no one seemed to click in that effortless way she had experienced back home with Jess. It was as though everyone already had their groups, their close friends, and Lily was once again the outsider, trying to figure out where she belonged. One evening, after an exhausting day of classes, Lily returned to her dorm room to find it unusually quiet. Her roommate, Sarah, had gone to a party with a few other students from their building. At first, Lily had planned to join them, but something held her back, an unease she couldn't quite shake. Instead, she decided to stay in, bury herself in her homework, and ignore the quiet ache in her chest. Sitting at her desk, her textbooks spread out in front of her, Lily tried to focus, but her mind kept wandering. She thought about home. She thought about Jess, wondering how she was doing, whether things were still as rocky between them as they had been before. She thought about her dad, and how she hadn't heard from him since that phone call before she left. But mostly, she thought about the future. This strange, uncertain future that lay ahead of her, one she didn't quite know how to navigate. Lily sighed and leaned back in her chair, staring out the window at the dimly lit campus. The air was cool, and the faint sounds of laughter and music drifted through the night. She wondered if she was ever going to feel truly at home here. She wondered if she would ever find her place. The next morning, Lily woke up feeling slightly better, her brief moment of doubt pushed to the back of her mind. She had a full day ahead of her, classes, a meeting with her advisor, and then a club fair in the evening. She was determined to shake off the previous day's melancholy and put her best foot forward. As she made her way to her first class, she was surprised to see a group of students gathered near the campus center. The sign read, "Freshman Welcome Breakfast." A small part of her hesitated, but she knew this could be the perfect opportunity to meet new people and start building connections. She walked over, grabbed a coffee, and took a seat at one of the tables, scanning the crowd for anyone who might seem friendly enough to talk to. After a few minutes of awkwardly scrolling through her phone, Lily noticed a girl sitting at a nearby table, looking as out of place as she felt. The girl had a kind face, but there was a visible discomfort in her posture, as though she were trying her hardest to blend in but didn't quite know how. Lily took a deep breath and walked over. "Hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but I thought I'd introduce myself," she said, offering a smile. "I'm Lily. This is a little overwhelming, huh?" The girl looked up, her eyes lighting up with relief. "Oh, hey, I'm Ellie," she said. "Yeah, definitely. I'm starting to wonder if everyone here already has their friend groups, and I just missed the memo." Lily laughed, feeling a sudden rush of camaraderie. "Same. I think we're both in the same boat." They both smiled at each other, and just like that, the ice was broken. They started talking about their classes, the club fair, and how strange it felt to be away from home for the first time. For the first time since arriving on campus, Lily felt like she was talking to someone who understood exactly what she was going through. "I'm glad you came over," Ellie said. "I've been feeling pretty lonely. I don't know what I was expecting, but I thought it would be easier to make friends, you know." Lily nodded. "Yeah, I get that. I think everyone thinks they're going to just fall into place, but it's harder than it seems. College is a big change." The conversation drifted from academics to life at college, and by the end of the breakfast, the two had exchanged phone numbers and planned to meet up at the club fair later that afternoon. It was a small step, but it was a step forward, a sign that things might get easier, that she wasn't as alone as she had thought. As the day went on, Lily felt more at ease. She attended her classes, met with her advisor, and even found a few new faces in the crowd of students at the club fair. She wasn't sure which, if any, clubs would become her new home, but she was determined to try. This was a new chapter, after all. And part of starting fresh was being open to change, even when it felt uncomfortable. Later that evening, as she sat in her dorm room, texting Ellie about their plans for the weekend, Lily reflected on the day. She realized that while things weren't perfect, while she still didn't have everything figured out, there was a certain comfort in taking things one step at a time. She didn't need to find all the answers right away. She just needed to keep showing up. Every day, every moment, even when it was hard. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As she finished texting Ellie and set her phone down, Lily felt a shift inside herself. It was subtle but real. A growing sense of hope that things were, in fact, falling into place, even when they didn't feel like they were. She wasn't the same girl who had stood in the empty graduation hall, feeling like the world was closing in on her. That girl had been lost, unsure of herself, and clinging to others for validation. But now, Lily was beginning to understand that the journey wasn't about waiting for the world to make sense. It was about finding meaning in the small moments, the new friendships, the quiet victories, and the strength that grew from pushing through the discomfort of change. Tomorrow would be a new day, and Lily was ready to embrace it. Lily woke up to the sound of her alarm blaring across the room, its shrill tone pulling her from a restless sleep. The morning light was still faint, casting a soft glow across her desk. She reached for her phone, squinting at the screen to see that it was already 7:45 a.m. She had overslept. Again. The first few weeks of college had flown by in a blur of new classes, endless assignments, and late-night study sessions. Despite the newfound camaraderie with Ellie, something about her daily routine felt exhausting, like she was running just to keep up. She was constantly trying to prove to herself that she could handle it all. But more often than not, she felt like she was just barely keeping her head above water. Lily quickly jumped out of bed, threw on a hoodie, and rushed to gather her things. She had a 9 a.m. lecture that she couldn't afford to miss. But as she looked around the room, something felt different. The empty space, the quiet hum of the campus outside her window, it all seemed so far removed from the bustling energy she had hoped to feel in her first month at college. Instead, the weight of expectations hung over her like a heavy blanket. She had to be perfect. She had to prove to everyone and to herself that she belonged here. It wasn't just about academic success, though. It was the social pressure, too. The idea that she should be making friends easily, having fun, and being fully immersed in everything college life had to offer. The truth was, though, that even with Ellie around, Lily still felt isolated. She still had moments where she didn't know who she was supposed to be. Was she the shy girl who sat in the back of the class, always too self-conscious to speak? Or was she supposed to be the outgoing social butterfly who thrived in large groups? As she rushed through the halls toward her lecture, Lily tried to shake off the feeling. She couldn't keep dwelling on her insecurities, not when there was so much to do. She had a paper to finish, a group project to work on, and countless other things on her to-do list. But as she sat down in her seat and opened her notebook, a sense of overwhelm swept over her. The syllabus was filled with deadlines, the professor was droning on about readings, and all Lily could think about was how much she was struggling to keep up. When class finally ended, Lily felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settle in her bones. She packed up her things, tried to focus on the task at hand, but the pressure of everything she was juggling felt suffocating. "Hey, Lily." Ellie's voice broke through her thoughts. Lily turned to see her friend waving from a few feet away. "Hey, Ellie," Lily replied, giving her a tired smile. "How's it going?" "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," Ellie said, her eyes full of concern. "Is everything okay?" Lily shrugged. "I don't know. I'm just trying to keep up with everything. Classes, assignments, making friends. It's a lot." Ellie nodded, a knowing expression on her face. "I get it. You're not the only one feeling like that. College is a huge transition, and it can be a lot to handle. But you don't have to do it all at once, you know." Lily looked at Ellie, surprised by how much the words resonated. It was so easy to forget that everyone else was struggling, too. It was easy to feel like she was the only one who didn't have it all figured out. But Ellie's words reminded her that everyone was in this together, even if they didn't always show it. "Thanks," Lily said quietly. "I needed to hear that." Ellie smiled. "Anytime. We're in this together, remember." Lily smiled back, feeling a small sense of relief. It wasn't much, but it was enough for the moment. They walked to the campus coffee shop together, talking about their classes and the weekend plans. The chatter felt light, almost normal, and for a brief moment, Lily could pretend like everything was okay. Maybe she wasn't the only one who didn't have it all figured out. Maybe everyone else was struggling in their own way, just like she was. Later that day, as Lily sat in the campus library trying to finish her assignments, her mind wandered. She thought about Jess, her best friend back home. The last time they had talked, their conversation had been tense, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Jess had been upset about Lily leaving, about how their friendship had changed. Lily had tried to explain that it wasn't her fault, that this was a part of growing up. But Jess hadn't understood. She hadn't wanted to understand. Lily knew that she couldn't change everything about her past, not the way she had left her family or how she had distanced herself from certain people. But she also knew that she couldn't keep carrying that burden. She couldn't keep expecting to fix everything or be perfect. College was supposed to be her chance to grow, to figure things out, and to become the person she wanted to be, not the person everyone else expected her to be. The pressure she had put on herself to be everything for everyone was suffocating. It was time to stop pretending to be someone she wasn't and start focusing on what mattered to her. The next day, after class, Lily sat in the courtyard with Ellie, enjoying the rare moment of quiet in the middle of the busy campus. She felt a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in weeks. "You know," Ellie said, taking a sip of her iced coffee, "I've been thinking about what you said the other day, about how you feel like you're not living up to expectations. I think that's the thing about college. It's not about meeting everyone else's standards. It's about figuring out your own." Lily nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. "I think I've been so focused on what everyone else thinks I should be that I've forgotten to ask myself what I actually want." Ellie smiled. "Exactly. College isn't just about grades and making friends. It's about finding yourself in all of it. And I think you're doing that. You've got more strength than you give yourself credit for." Lily looked at her friend, a sense of gratitude welling up inside her. "Thanks, Ellie. I think I'm starting to understand that. Maybe I don't have to have it all figured out right now." "You don't," Ellie agreed. "And you don't have to do it alone either." Lily smiled, feeling the weight she had been carrying start to lift, just a little. She had a long road ahead of her. College wasn't going to be easy, and life had its own challenges. But for the first time in a while, Lily felt a flicker of hope. She didn't have to have everything figured out all at once. She could take it one step at a time, and in doing so, she would discover who she truly was without the weight of everyone else's expectations. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. As the weeks passed, the days blurred together in a haze of homework, late-night study sessions, and growing friendships. Lily started to feel more at home at college, but the unease that had once consumed her hadn't entirely disappeared. There were moments when she caught herself comparing her progress to others, wondering if she was moving at the right pace, wondering if she was getting it all wrong. It was during one of these moments, sitting at her desk in her dorm, staring blankly at her laptop screen, that Lily realized something. She wasn't just struggling with the transition to college. She was struggling with herself. The expectation to be perfect, to live up to everyone else's idea of who she should be, had become a prison. She had tried so hard to keep up with the image she had created of herself, a picture of a confident, capable woman who had it all figured out. But the truth was that she didn't have it all figured out. And maybe that was okay. Maybe it was okay to be uncertain, to be unsure of who she was becoming. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to feel the weight of that realization. She wasn't the girl who had walked across the stage at her high school graduation, expecting the world to hand her everything on a silver platter. She was someone new, someone learning to accept her own flaws, and the reality that she didn't have to have all the answers right away. But as freeing as that thought was, it also scared her. because letting go of the illusion of perfection meant accepting that failure, mistakes, and uncertainty were a part of the journey. And that was a terrifying thought. That evening, Ellie knocked on her door to invite her to dinner. "Hey, I've got a table at that Mexican place we like. You in?" Ellie asked, poking her head into the room. Lily looked up from her laptop, her mind still spinning from the internal conversation she had been having. She could sense that Ellie had been a little more intuitive than usual. Her voice was softer than normal, and there was a look of understanding in her eyes. "Yeah, sure. I could use a break," Lily said, forcing a smile. She quickly grabbed her jacket and followed Ellie out of the dorm, grateful for the distraction. The restaurant was busy, filled with the sounds of laughter, clinking silverware, and the sizzle of fajitas. Lily let the warmth of the atmosphere settle over her, feeling comforted by the familiar surroundings. They were seated near the window, and Ellie immediately launched into a conversation about her recent philosophy class and how much she was enjoying it. But Lily wasn't really listening. Her mind was still miles away, trying to untangle the mess of thoughts that had been consuming her for weeks. Ellie paused mid-sentence, glancing at her curiously. "Lily, what's going on? You've been really quiet lately. Are you okay?" Lily hesitated, feeling the weight of the question press down on her. She hadn't realized how much she had been carrying, how much she had been hiding behind the facade of "I'm fine." But for some reason, sitting across from Ellie, she felt like it was time to admit the truth. "No," she said softly. "I'm not okay, actually. I've been feeling lost. I keep thinking I'm supposed to have everything figured out: college, my future, even who I am, and it just doesn't feel like I'm getting it right. I'm so tired of pretending I have all the answers." Ellie's expression softened, her gaze unwavering as she listened to Lily's words. "You don't have to have it all figured out, Lily. No one does. You're allowed to be uncertain, to not know exactly where you're going. It's okay to make mistakes." Lily shook her head, the vulnerability threatening to overwhelm her. "But it's hard. I feel like everyone around me knows exactly what they want to do with their lives. They have a plan, and I'm just floating. I'm scared that I'm not going to figure it out, that I'm falling behind." Ellie took a deep breath, clearly choosing her words carefully. "Listen, I get it. It feels like everyone has their life on track, but that's not the reality. Everyone is just figuring it out as they go along. The pressure to have everything perfect is the real problem. You don't have to live up to some idea of who you should be. You're already doing great. You're here. You're working hard, you're learning, you're growing. That's enough." Lily was quiet for a long moment, the weight of Ellie's words slowly sinking in. She had been so focused on her perceived failures, on all the things she thought she should have done differently, that she had failed to see how far she had come. "I've been so focused on what I'm not, I haven't stopped to appreciate who I am," Lily said quietly, almost to herself. Ellie smiled gently. "Exactly. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you. And that's more than enough." The conversation lingered between them, but Lily felt a shift inside her, a lightness that hadn't been there before. Ellie was right, she didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to rush through life, trying to check off boxes and meet expectations. What mattered was that she was here, she was trying, and she was learning. That was enough. As they finished their meal, the two of them talked about their plans for the weekend. Ellie had invited Lily to a student event that would include a concert, and for the first time, Lily felt a spark of excitement at the thought of it. It wasn't about finding answers or trying to figure out her entire future in one night. It was about letting go of the pressure to be perfect and just enjoying the experience. That night, as Lily lay in bed, the weight that had been pressing on her chest for so long began to ease. She wasn't ready to have everything figured out, and maybe she never would be. But she had made it this far, and that was something worth celebrating. For the first time in weeks, Lily allowed herself to rest, knowing that she didn't have to have all the answers right now. She would figure it out, step by step. And for once, that was enough. The weeks that followed Ellie's heartfelt conversation with Lily were marked by a sense of growth and change. As the campus bloomed with the colors of fall, crimson and gold leaves dotting the sidewalks and cool breezes teasing the air, Lily began to change as well. Not in some dramatic, overnight transformation, but in the quiet, subtle way that a person does when they've started to shed the weight of the past. The constant pressure to be perfect no longer hung over her head like a storm cloud. Instead, Lily learned to breathe a little easier, to focus on one day at a time. She began saying no when she needed to and embracing moments of rest without feeling guilty about them. The fear of failure no longer paralyzed her. Now, it was just another part of the process. After all, everyone failed sometimes. It didn't make them failures. It simply meant they were trying. One chilly Saturday morning, as the fall semester neared its end, Lily was sitting in the campus coffee shop, her laptop open in front of her, her coffee growing cold beside her. She wasn't working on an assignment or trying to meet some impossible deadline. For the first time in a long while, she was simply sitting. Ellie had invited her to a weekend event, a student concert, complete with live bands and food trucks, and as she looked out the window at the lively campus below, Lily realized something. She was exactly where she needed to be. A few months ago, she had thought she was supposed to have everything figured out by now. She had been obsessed with meeting deadlines, with proving her worth. But now, as she watched a group of students chatting and laughing in the courtyard, it hit her. There was no timeline for success. No one had the answers. They were all just figuring it out as they went along, embracing the moments, the learning, and even the mistakes along the way. A message popped up on her phone, pulling her from her thoughts. It was from her mom. "Hey, sweetie, I just wanted to remind you how proud I am of you. I know this transition hasn't been easy, but I see how much you're growing and it fills my heart with joy. Keep being you. Love you." Lily's throat tightened. It had been a while since she had really talked to her mom. The distance between them felt bigger than just the miles separating their two homes. There was a time when Lily felt like she had to prove something to everyone, her parents, her teachers, herself. She had been trying to meet their expectations, but in the process, she had forgotten how to listen to herself. But now, as she read her mom's message, Lily realized that her mom didn't need her to be perfect. She didn't need her to have it all figured out. She just needed her to keep going, to keep trying. And that was enough. It was always going to be enough. The weight that had been so heavy on her shoulders in the beginning of the semester felt lighter now, almost non-existent. She had let go of the need to be perfect, to fit into some preconceived idea of who she was supposed to be. And in that release, she found freedom. With a deep breath, Lily closed her laptop, grabbed her coat, and made her way out of the coffee shop. The air was crisp, and she could hear the sounds of the concert beginning in the distance. It was a simple evening of music, food, and laughter, but for Lily, it was so much more. She wasn't just attending a concert. She was taking part in life. She was actively participating in her own journey. She was allowing herself to enjoy the moment without worrying about what came next. It was exactly what she needed. As she walked across campus, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Ellie. "Hey, we saved you a seat. Hurry up, it's about to start." Lily smiled, typing back, "I'm on my way." When she arrived at the concert, Ellie greeted her with a big hug. The group had already settled into a spot on the grass, with blankets spread out and snacks shared amongst them. Ellie handed her a drink, and for the next few hours, Lily found herself immersed in the music, surrounded by people who accepted her exactly as she was. She still didn't have all the answers. She still didn't know exactly what she wanted to do after graduation or where she'd end up. But in that moment, none of that seemed important. What mattered was that she was here now. She was living, experiencing, growing, no longer weighed down by the pressure to be perfect, to fit into anyone's idea of who she should be. And that was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?